Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Hope you're all doing well out there. The sun is beginning to shine. We're getting blue skies here in the UK. Spring has officially sprung. And I think we've all been on a huge journey in the last few years. But one topic that I've seen be treated with intrepidation and a bit of caution, and go from that to excitement, is automation. So today I've invited Jakob Freund, CEO at Camunda, onto the podcast, which is used by thousands of developers who use their process automation platform to design, automate and improve processes, and ultimately provide better customer experiences and deliver projects. But today we're going to be discussing one of their latest reports around automation and the trends that follow, as well as the missed opportunity when organisations don't start small with automation, and the criteria for organisations that can greatly benefit from maybe bringing a chief automation officer on board. But enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to sunny Berlin in Germany, where Jakob is waiting to share his story today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Neil. So my name is Jakob Freund. I'm one of the two founders of Camunda. I'm also the CEO of the company. So in that sense, I'm responsible for our company's strategic direction, the vision behind it, and hopefully inspiring our people to make it happen.
And I always like to find out more about my guests. We're talking to you today in sunny Berlin, but I've got to ask, how did you get here? What's your origin story, and where did your passion for tech come from? And what was it that put you on this path you're on now?
Yeah, so I mean, with regards to Berlin, that's where I was born and raised. So I didn't get very far in my life, to be frank. And when it comes to running a software company, I have to admit that I always wanted to do that. So even as a teenager, I was inspired by Bill Gates and others back in the 90s. And then during my studies, I came in touch with business process management. So the whole idea of how to organize like a business operationally and apply techniques like process modeling and then also technically process automation in order to make the organization more efficient. And it sounds weird, but I found that fascinating. So really inspiring. And I really wanted to work in that area. So I had a couple of jobs as an employee, basically, right after finishing my studies in the mid-2000s in the field. And then I started a company together with my co-founder, Bernd Rücker, in 2008, Camunda, that I'm still running today, with a desire to help organizations apply business process management in practice, and then later on also to provide them with the right technology.
And when you was that teenager in Berlin in the early 90s, what was your computer that you had then? Was it an Amiga, or was that too?
It's actually, I was a PC guy, like always been. So when I was, when I was like 9 years old, I believe, I think it was about 9, I really wanted to play computer games like Nintendo, etc. in the late 80s, and my dad wouldn't have it, so I didn't get that. But he allowed me to use his computer, which was a PC XT. That was the model actually, and it didn't really have any games, but it had Turbo Pascal. And my dad actually taught me programming. He taught me how to write a program about calculating interest rates. So he used to be a teacher for accounting, which is like the most boring thing you could imagine, I guess. It took me like a couple of years to find out that you can actually also manipulate strings in Turbo Pascal. And then I programmed a hangman game, basically, and actually put that on diskettes, printed labels that said 5 Deutschmarks, and tried to sell the game. Nobody would buy it, but ever since then, I've basically been very passionate about building and selling software.
Oh man, what a great story! I love that idea of your dad there trying to show you how rock and roll accounting can be, and you're having none of it. But it was that path that eventually led you to Camunda, which is also on a journey from working as a process automation provider to a process orchestration provider. So, can you tell me more about that and the story behind this move?
Yeah, it's really we're really becoming more precise about what we do with our type of software. That's the main reason here. So in 2013, out of our consulting business experience, we decided to offer a alternative, more developer oriented, more flexible and open source BPM software for basically generally saying automating business processes. The point is nowadays. Automation is a huge space, and there are lots of different vendors with very different types of product and competing for the audience attention. There's a lot of noise, so to speak, in the process automation market. So we at Camunda, we are not, for example, a robotic process automation vendor like RPA, and we're also not a process mining vendor, and so on and so forth. We focus on orchestrating all the different possible endpoints of a process. So orchestrating people, systems, and devices, telling them when it's their turn to do something in the end-to-end process, and doing that based on a standard called BPMN to bring business and IT together. So this type of software is not RPA, it's not process mining, etc. It really focuses on that end-to-end orchestration. And that's why we say, yes, we play in the process automation market, which is a huge, diverse market of technologies. But we focus within that market on the category of process orchestration. That's the category that we lead, basically.
And it was that move that put you guys on my radar, along, of course, with the release of your recent automation report, which is paving the path to reach process automation's potential. But can you tell me a little bit more about that report and who it was that you surveyed?
Yes, sure. So as I just said, the process automation market is big and fuzzy and ambiguous, but it matters actually a lot. So everyone is trying to basically automate the heck out of their business because everyone wants to be the Amazon of the industry, so to speak, and that's why you need automation for. So we want to bring a bit more clarity to that field, and we surveyed more than 600 decision makers roughly in different IT departments all over the world, mostly North America and Europe, and we basically identified the importance, the relevance of process automation for the sake of especially digital transformation, which is probably not really in question anymore, but still is good to have some data to quantify that. And we also identified what are the most common misunderstandings, challenges, pitfalls that you might encounter when you try to make automation happen.
And the standout from the report for me was that the processes that are unseen and are often actually overlooked algorithms that actually define how organizations are run. And they are the tools successful businesses use to keep themselves in line and propel themselves toward achieving their goals. Ultimately, they just feel like the unsung heroes of every single business in every part of the world. But I'm curious, from the conversations that you're having, are businesses waking up to just how much they're relying on those algorithms?
Yeah, it's funny that you use that term algorithm. It's a concept. It's almost philosophical. I don't know if you're familiar with a writer and historian from Israel, Harari. He wrote the book *Sapiens: Brief History of Mankind*, yes. And then also *Homo Deus*, which is about the big themes in the 21st century. And Harari states that algorithm is arguably the most important concept of our time. So everything is turned into an algorithm, basically. And when we now look at enterprises, at companies, you can argue that business processes are the algorithms of organizations. So once you are able to express your daily operations as algorithms, you can literally hit the run button and automate it, execute it right away. So that's the context also for that terminology. So to come back to your question, many decision makers are not necessarily aware of the term algorithm. It's almost maybe it's a bit too intellectual, right? They have matters at hand that they need to take care of, but the meaning behind it. So the desire to digitalize your business, to capture the fuzziness that drives your daily operations and put them into something specific, clear as an algorithm, and then let it run in order to scale your business, provide superior customer experience while being operationally efficient, being inspired by the Amazons, Netflix, and what have you at this world. That's certainly materializing. They're very much aware of that.
And as someone that's working right in the heart of this space, you've probably seen it all and then some, and heard so many different conversations. What were the big takeaways from the reports? Were there any key stats that stood out for you?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned that the awareness for automation is there. So, for example, I think like around 92% of all the IT decision makers actually describe process automation as a vital element of digital transformation. So, like there's a consensus on that matter, which is good. It's a good baseline, so to speak. Then it becomes interesting, of course, to understand what that actually means and what can potentially also stand in the way, or what the implications are with regards to their priorities and decisions for the next year, for example. And just to give you like one or two data points there. Around 89% say that process automation contribute to their business growth directly. So there's certainly this imperative, this clarity. Like around a third claim that their organization realized like 100% ROI or better for their process automation initiatives in the past year, which is actually also great. At the same time, what's interesting is that only 12% say that they've been implementing process automation as they had planned this year. So like they deem it's important. When they do it, they see the positive results, but quite often they don't get to actually doing it. So it's not happening to the extent that they want it to happen, that it frankly, obviously also should happen.
And so much has changed in the last 2 years. And if we go back 2-3 years, I remember automation being almost a dirty word in business. But of course, then the Great Resignation started, and people were like, I don't want to do repetitive, mundane tasks 9 till 5 every day. I want to add more value. I want to do something different. And by the large part, I think businesses are embracing automation now and seeing the value of it and freeing up staff to do things that can add value. But what are the biggest blockers around automation in businesses that you're seeing right now? And how are you helping businesses overcome those blockers?
Yeah. So I mean, to your first point, again, not becoming too philosophical again, but we can really say automation has been with humankind like right from the start, like inventing the wheel, whatever. It was always about let's get more done with like less efforts from our side as humans, like always. So that has been part of our identity. And it will always be part of our identity as mankind. So in that sense, there's no way around that. Automation is bound to happen. What can be automated will be automated, should be automated. People are sometimes a bit concerned because they find it could affect their own contributions or their own relevance in an organization or in society, and that concern is justified, of course, to some degree. And we need to mitigate that. We need to figure out what we can do if machines do certain things on our behalf. As simple as that. Totally fair, and need to be faced and figured out by society together. Now, to your second point about the blockers, what can actually prevent automation in business, what can make it difficult? Just to give you one example, maybe, you can easily focus on local automation as opposed to holistic automation. And that's what we have seen happening with, for example, robotic process automation, RPA, in the past 2 or 3 years, and it was all the rage. So RPA should really be called local or robotic task automation, because it's all about automating granular tasks conducted by individuals in front of the computer, like entering a bit of data here, bringing a bit of data there. That's what RPA can do for you. It's like the Windows macro recorder on steroids, so to speak. And that automates tasks as a local building brick in an end-to-end business process. If we look at an end-to-end process, from, for example, taking orders to delivering the goods to sending an invoice and then like watching incoming payments, that's an end-to-end process. Lots of local tasks in between. So one of the challenges these days is that, I'll let you give just one example, maybe. Deutsche Telekom is a good example. Biggest carrier in Europe. They have a customer services unit in Germany, 3,000 employees, lots of manual work that used to happen there. They introduced RPA a few years ago. They automated local tasks, and they ended up with hundreds, if not thousands, of those bots. But they were isolated. They weren't integrated with one another. So they didn't really support the end-to-end business process. And that's actually a common pattern that is also surfaced in the study. So around 78% of the decision makers report that their RPA bots operate in silos. They do not connect to broader end-to-end processes. And that is a challenge. That's an issue. It gives a lack of visibility, a lack of understanding, and especially lack of control and efficiency for the end-to-end process. That does not provide the customer experience you want to provide, that disconnect. So to come to your third part of the question, Camunda's job as orchestrator is to take those bots, combine them with manual work, API services, AI components, whatever, stitch all of that together along the business process and make sure that everything happens when it's their turn in order to execute the entire end-to-end process.
And as I said a few moments ago, you are privileged by working in the heart of this space, and you're having conversations with businesses and customers all over the world. Was there anything that surprised you in the report?
Well, there's always things that you wouldn't have expected. So I just mentioned the 72% that say their RPA bots are not integrated. I did not expect it to be that high, to be honest. So I would have thought that, hey, yes, we know it's an issue, but maybe for like 30%, 40% in the cases. But and that's what we heard, I think, about a year ago, like last time we ran the report. So it seems as if, especially now with regards to RPA, there's a certain, I wouldn't say disillusionment, but a certain realization as to how far you can actually take that technology and what the downside is. And many companies have introduced RPA in the past 5 years, and it takes you usually a couple of years until you realize that and that lack of integration. So it seems as if the market is now arriving at that realization, and I did not expect that to be the case this year already.
And it's looking like hybrid work is here to stay. So I've got to ask, what role do you see automation playing in the future of work too, with that expectation that we can work from anywhere, anytime, any location, and on any device? What role do you see automation playing there in the future of work?
Yeah, so it reminds me of something that happened about 2 years ago when COVID hit and everyone had to work from home suddenly. And I remember that not a couple of weeks, but 4 to 5 weeks later, that's just an anecdote now, but it's representative. One of our customers is the European Commission. And so they reached out and said, hey, we need to accelerate our Camunda projects. We need to prioritize them. And the reason is because our staff is now working from home. And that means they cannot collaborate the way they used to collaborate, like walking over to their colleague's desk, tap on the shoulder, and just figure something out. We had planned to streamline our workflows anyway, but we now need to prioritize that because we need to make sure they, again, happen reliably end to end with people that are remote, that are not in the same office. So, and that's just one anecdote, right? But since then, we have seen that time and again and again and again. So they're the obvious solutions like Zoom, Slack, and others that bring people together. But process automation in general, and process then now again orchestration in particular, is about streamlining your operations and making sure that everyone does their work when it's their turn, no matter where they are. So in that sense, I'm seeing orchestration and automation playing a key role in this hybrid work setup where people are not co-located anymore.
Wow, incredible. I've loved chatting with you today. But before we leave the listeners today, I always like to leave everyone with a personal touch of inspiration by the guest. So I'm going to ask you to share either a book that has inspired you, or a go-to song that you need to get your head in the zone that you listen to, or a song that's important to you. What are you going to leave us with today? And is there a story to accompany your choice too?
Yeah, I love to talk about books. There are also songs that I like, but I have to admit that I love to read, and books have always been a great source of inspiration for me. I've read many books about how to build tech software companies, as you can imagine. I would say that 90% didn't help me so much, and then there's like a few gems. So I love to recommend those. The first I can recommend is Ben Horowitz, who wrote the book The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I believe it's a very well-known book, especially among tech entrepreneurs. But I have to say that it really helped me more than once as a tech founder and CEO to navigate very difficult situations in my company. So really great help and source of inspiration, and even also to some degree source of confirmation for certain intuitions and instincts you might have where you're not always certain about. It's very hands-on, very practical. that has been around for years now. And the other one I would quickly recommend is Amp It Up. Amp It Up is written by the former CEO of ServiceNow, now the CEO of Snowflake. I think his name is Frank Slotman, and he published that book, I think, a couple months ago or so. And I find it that's one of the best books I've read recently, because it really gives insights into his perspective and idea about how to build a high-performing software company. And it's a bit controversial, I would say. It's pretty badass in some ways. Yeah. But I think it's about the difficult realities that you need to be facing when building software companies. And it helps you to, at least it provides one approach, one angle to solve them, which I find very inspiring.
Fantastic. I'll get both of those books added to our Amazon wish list so other listeners can check those out, and hopefully it inspires them too. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more information about the report that we've been discussing today, or just finding out more information about what you do and contacting your team, what's the best way of doing that?
I mean, of course, the easiest way is always to just pull up the website, camunda.com. I'm personally on LinkedIn. So if you just, Google on LinkedIn for Jakob or Camunda CEO or whatever, you will find me and can contact me there directly. And those are the two best ways I would say to get in touch with us.
Awesome. Well, I'll add a link to that on the show notes so people can find you nice and easy. Love chatting with you today. And I love how it all began with that, your dad's PC, him teaching you how to program the accounting stuff. And fast forward to today and the great work you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time to share that story with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
What a great guy. Absolutely loved chatting with him. And it also brought back very fond memories of my trip to Berlin a few years ago. Man, next time I go, Jakob, if you're listening back to this, we will enjoy a currywurst and a large beer in the sunshine of Berlin one day. But generally can't thank him enough for coming on here and sharing his story. But over to you. I want to hear your stories and your experiences with automation, good and bad. And you can do that in a number of ways. You can leave me a little comment via a direct message or an email, or even come on the podcast to share your story. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But as I live in the UK and my vitamin D levels have been depleted over the last few months, I'm going to go out there and stock up on some good old-fashioned vitamin D direct from the source. And I mean the sun, of course. But I'll return again tomorrow with a typical Brit pink texture to my skin, no doubt. But luckily, it's an audio podcast, so you won't see it. So thank you so much for listening. Hope you'll join me again tomorrow. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.